Shingo Yamagami, welcome to Meridian 100.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's lovely to have you back. Shingo, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. You've been advising Japan's new Prime Minister, as I understand it,
Yes,
Sanae Takaichi. Tell us a little bit about what your role has been.
I have known her for almost 40 years by now. I know when she was working as an assistant on Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., as a staff member of Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. I was a studying diplomat at the Japanese embassy in Washington. And since then, she got, very well ahead in politics. And when she was chairman of Policy, Research Council at Liberal Democratic Party, I often went to her office to, brief her about, treaties that the Japanese government was about to conclude. And I was once invited to her, policy study group to give a briefing on intelligence and diplomacy. So the relation, goes on. And believe me, she is one of the most staunch, conservative politicians in Japanese politics. She has a strong, mindset on how the nation of Japan, should be. She's a protege of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was a prime minister who decided to dispatch me to Canberra as Japanese ambassador. So all in all, I think her advent to power, bodes, very well, not only for Japan, but also for the future relationship between, Japan and Australia. And what was very impressive to me is at her first policy speech in the Japanese Diet Parliament, she emphasized the importance of free and open in the Pacific. And in addition to that, she mentioned the importance of Quad, Japan, Australia, US, India, strategic dialogue. And this has not happened for the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years, during the three of her, predecessors. So, I have high hopes for her and her administration. And it's time for Japan to, regain strong and robust diplomacy.
Okay, and tell me, you have been offering or providing strategic or foreign policy advice, is that correct?
Yes, I have been doing that, and of course I'm not one, only one of them. She's been listening to many people, but I think she and I do share a lot of commonalities when it comes to, how Japan should behave, in international setting, and she is a strong promoter of Japan-US alliance. But not only that, she is fully aware of the importance of Japan's strategic partnership with important close partners like Australia. And you must have noted how she performed in her first 3 international appearances right after she assumed Prime Minister's office. First, she went to ASEAN-related meeting in Malaysia. Then she welcomed the visit of U.S. President Donald Trump in Tokyo. Then she went on to visit South Korea to attend APEC summit meeting. Believe me, she succeeded in making a rocket start in diplomacy.
Why don't we start with Donald Trump, because she has a very strong bond with the US president, perhaps a uniquely strong bond among foreign leaders. I mean, you might have a different view, but I can't off the top of my head think of a foreign leader who's attracted such unqualified and effusive praise from Donald Trump, who can be quite prickly, as some have discovered, with foreign leaders. But Takaichi seems to get along very well with him. What will that look like in a formal sense? How, if at all, will the relationship with Washington or between Washington and Tokyo change or deepen? What's it going to look like?
I will give you one good example of how she made a stark, contrast to her predecessor, Ishiba. When Ishiba, went to visit Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., at the White House meeting, Donald Trump, gave a photo of two of them. And, by doing so, Donald Trump said to the effect that you, Prime Minister Ishiba, will be a great people's prime minister. This is a very vague expression, great people's prime minister. It's not a great prime minister. But when Takaichi met Donald Trump in Tokyo, Donald Trump referred to her as she will be one of the greatest prime ministers of Japan. And right on the aircraft carrier George Washington, after the summit meeting in Tokyo, in front of all the sailors, U.S. sailors, Donald Trump, said, all of a sudden, Donald Trump and Takaichi became close friends. So there is a stark difference in terms of warmth and affinity. President Trump exhibited in public vis-a-vis Prime Minister Takaichi. And I think that this is a good start of building relationship of trust. Like I said, she is for strong defense of Japan. She would like to cement U.S.-Japan alliance. So all in all, there is a lot they can do together. Japanese president, U.S. president. Yes.
Maybe just go into a bit of detail there, Shingo. What can Takaichi do, and what can Donald Trump and Takaichi do to deepen the relationship? I mean, Takaichi has said she will increase defense spending or take Japan's defense spending to 2% by, I think, March of next year, which is well ahead of schedule.
Yes.
But Japan is already, investing heavily in long-range strike capabilities. It's already muscling up. What else is she going to do you think?
I think, in light of, three major challenges, strategic challenges we are facing in this region, i.e., China, Russia, DPRK, there is a lot Japan should do. So nobody is complacent with spending only 2% of GDP on national defense. We are fully aware that we have to do more, like members of NATO are doing. So all in all, I think she is looking beyond 2%, building on spending 2% of GDP on national defense. She is eager to do more, and not only in terms of budgetary figures. There is a lot we should do in terms of strengthening interoperability or strategic coordination between Japanese self-defense force and U.S. forces, because we are suffering from tyranny of proximity. Taiwan is so close. Chinese continent is just across the body of water called East China Sea. So I think this kind of sentiment was pretty much shared by the two leaders. And also, like Australia, we have an issue of tariff, and during the previous administration, Japan agreed to this package of trade and investment. And they are there to faithfully, implement this Japan-US trade agreement as well.
She's got, as we've said, a very, very close relationship with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has her respect. What do you think she will use that for? And what sort of advice do you see Takaichi giving the US president in relation to, say, China and Taiwan?
I think, she is a kind of person, who can go directly to, President Trump and, share her, thought, with him. Because I tell you this because previous prime minister was rather reluctant to have a, one-on-one meeting with President Trump. He was so fixated with the thought, trying not to provoke, Donald Trump. like some other leaders, in the Western democracies are hesitant to meet, Donald Trump, one-on-one, the same thing. But in the case of Takaichi, it's totally different. She knows she has to go, directly, to him. So in that regard, I think she shares the same sentiment and temperament with, our former Prime Minister Abe. As you recall, Abe, like Boris Johnson, was in quite, successful in striking, very cordial relationship, close relationship with, Donald Trump in his first administration. So I think Takaichi would like to follow the footsteps of Shinzo Abe in that regard.
Is there, do you know if she shares the concern among some that Donald Trump might forsake Taiwan for the sake of some kind of economic settlement with China, that there is a concern, and I'm not saying that I share it or you share it, but there is a concern that the US president might abandon the cause of Taiwanese independence in the face of, or for some sort of economic settlement. A, do you think that is a risk? And B, what is Takaichi's view on that risk, and what does she propose to do about it?
As a student of international, relations, I have heard, such sentiment expressed on various occasions. That said, I think both countries, Australia and Japan, not necessarily in a position to completely take what is going to transpire. We are the actors together. We can influence, we can shape the thinking, on the part of our American partners. So in that regard, I think Takaichi is willing to play a role. She is, ready to convey Japan's thinking or Japan's, viewpoints to the heads and, mind and even heart of U.S. president. And she is eager to strike a good working relationship with her counterpart in Washington, D.C. And I think that kind of attitude is very, very important when it comes to dealing with the United States. Yes, of course, U.S. is far bigger than us. It's the only superpower in terms of, military prowess. But that said, we are here to strike, constructive partnership with the United States. So like, Anthony Albanese, went all the way to Washington and trying to, have a, good conversation with President Trump. I think Takaichi can do that in a similar manner.
All right. Well, look, on that note, let's turn to Australia for a moment. What sort of relationship, or what can Australia expect from the Takaichi government? How will it be different? Will it apply, or will Takaichi apply a little bit more pressure on our Prime Minister to increase our own defence spending and take a perhaps slightly different, more muscular posture in relation to China? What do you think she will do?
Well, I think, it all boils down to China. How to cope with the strategic challenge, posed by the rise of China. I think it is as simple as that. No, there is no mincing words at this juncture of history. So, urgent task in front of her is, how to reinvigorate our strategic partners amongst, Aussies, Americans, Japanese, and Indians. Because we all know, there is an awkward, relationship right now between, Delhi and Washington, D.C. And both Australia and Japanese are in a position to, talk to Americans and Indians how strategically important it is for us to maintain our unity.
Tell me, do you think that she will be applying some gentle, friendly pressure on the Albanese government to take a more robust public position on China? I know that this view has been aired in Tokyo in the past. There is a view that Australia's current approach to China, whilst well-intentioned, perhaps sends the wrong signal, and a stronger signal and more robust language might be a better deterrent. Do you think she's likely to send that message to Mr. Albanese?
I think so. And you know what happened just yesterday and today? She was talking in a similar tone with former Prime Minister Abe. She said that the Taiwan contingency could be a Japan contingency, and Japan will be in the position to, resort to the, right of self-defense, in terms of having Taiwan. And then this, Consul General, Chinese Consul General, stationed in Osaka, wrote on the Twitter that her dirty neck will be chopped off.
Oh.
Can you believe this happened between Australia and Japan and Australia and China? No way, right? So we are experiencing, this kind of, upgraded, or almost insane, exertion of wolf warrior, diplomacy. So Japan is on the front line of squarely facing up to China. Our prime minister's neck will be chopped off. That's what the Chinese diplomat in Osaka stated. Can you believe this? So this shows the severity of situation we are facing right now, and certainly she will be more than ready to share her sentiment with our friends in Australia and how we can do together in terms of letting Chinese behave themselves.
Because she's on record as having described a potential conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan as a survival threatening situation, I believe is the term she used, which potentially allows, as I understand it, and correct me if any of this is wrong, as I understand it, allows or gives the Japanese government some cover to engage its own military forces in support of the United States. Comments like that don't get made by accident, or they don't usually get made by accident. They convey a strategic message, and the message in this case, it seems to me, is to China, which is, if the Americans are in, we're in too. So factor that into your calculations. Is that a fair assessment of?
Yes, and believe me, Paul, this is not the first time for Chinese diplomats stationed in Japan to say things like that. Just last year, for the second time in a few years, Chinese ambassador in Tokyo stated in public, if Japan should support the independence of Taiwan, Japanese people will be brought into fire. Can you believe this? So, they don't mince their words, these days, they are ready to express, I would say, declaration of war, or they are willing to, express their willingness to, murder, Japanese public. We are at this, very critical and dangerous, moment in history. So appeasement, cannot work. We have to present a strong facade so that our deterrence, could work. It's up to us, incumbent upon countries like Japan, Australia, America, the peace and stability of this region is of utmost importance, and nobody can bully us.
How do you think Takaichi's election has been? Well, I think we've perhaps answered this question. It's a silly question, but what kind of, I'll ask it anyway. How do you think her election has been received in Beijing, and what kind of, what does the future hold, the near-term future hold for Japan's relationship with Beijing, given what you've just said about the various comments by various ambassadors?
I think, Beijing was trying to play down the election of Takaichi. Takaichi was, as you know, strongly supported by the general public. According to the Japan Economic Journal, the recent figure, approval rate for Takaichi amounts as high as 74%. That's really unprecedented for any Japanese politician, and Beijing's, does not seem to like this. And they would like to see more docile, obedient, even sycophantic politicians, coming forward. So for the time being, they will try to cold shoulder, Takaichi, as they used to do vis-a-vis, Prime Minister Abe. But Takaichi was very, very skillful in trying to create a business-like meeting in her first meeting with Xi Jinping in South Korea. So we'll see how far Japan and China can go. But as long as China maintains this attitude of coercion, it won't reach us any too far, and that's not productive at all.
I suppose that it underscores yet again the need for collaborative alliance diplomacy between Australia, South Korea, the Philippines, Japan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, well, one glimmer of hope is, among all those, Southeast Asian nations, it is certainly, the Philippines that took the turn, and, compared with the previous, administration, the current, president of the Philippines is, ready to call a spade, and he is willing to promote his country's ties with countries like Australia, Japan, and US in the areas of maritime security and economic security. That's very, very encouraging. And I just belong to a Australian think tank, IFRS, Institute for Regional Security, and over there too, we are eager to promote trilateral cooperation among Australia, Japan, and the Philippines.
Do you know, just speaking of Australia and Japan, do you know if Takaichi has spoken yet with our Prime Minister? I assume they've had
yes. They had a meeting already, one-on-one, and I understand the atmosphere of the meeting was very positive and very heartwarming.
Yeah, okay. So just getting back for a moment to strategic policy under Takaichi. I mean, Japan is on its own strategic journey. It is acquiring long-range strike capabilities. It's reforming slowly its constitution, its pacifist constitution. It's increasing defence exports, which I know is another area of interest for Takaichi. Would it be fair to say that she'll continue the current trajectory, but perhaps accelerate the path or the rate at which, the speed at which Japan moves down that pathway?
One thing, yes, I think they are, they will certainly accelerate the process. And one good sign is Prime Minister Takaichi appointed, Mr. Koizumi, Shinjiro Koizumi, the son of former Prime Minister Koizumi, as a new defense minister. And as I recall from my days in Canberra, Koizumi-san has been enjoying good, working relationship with Richard Marles, your Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister. So they are two responsible ministers in charge of this, Mogami, type frigate deal. And yes, we have to come up with contract. And if the contract is concluded, they have to faithfully, implement it. So as far as, two responsible ministers are concerned, I think we have the right kind of people at the right time. So this is going to be a first, litmus test of our, further, promoted, strategic partnership between Japan and Australia.
Indeed. And just on that note, Shingo, can we expect to see you playing a role in the new Takaichi government? Will you be reprising government service?
I think I have come to find that I just cannot forfeit this freedom of speech. After 40 years of toiling and being bound by the shackles of government, and now I can freely write and I can freely speak wherever I go. So I'm willing to give advice to the current administration, from outside rather than from inside, But in so doing, I think I can make a lot of contribution to further advancing Japan's relationship with Australia. And I shall keep on going back to Australia.
I'm sure that's true. Although I don't remember you being that circumspect as a diplomat. I think you were pretty free-willing and free-speaking, which was very refreshing.
Some people hate me for that.
Well, like I said, it's a refreshing change to have a diplomat who speaks his or her mind.
Yes. Thank you.
Shingo Yamagami, thanks for joining us on Meridian 100.
Nice to be with you, Paul.